In this video, we're reviewing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem and showing you how to evolve yourself with a delicious cocktail I've named the Ooze. Today on the Martini Shot. Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot, home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. My name is Brandon. Before we get into the review, we need a drink. Introducing the Ooze.
Ooze.
Inspired by the suspicious green gunk that turned our heroes from turtles to freaks of nature, the Ooze is a tall green drink made out of crisp, sweet fruit flavors like green apple, lychee, and lime. Best of all, it's easy to drink and is great for the summer heat, so let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Grab your shaker and let's go ahead and start with our juices first. First starting with some lime juice, you're gonna be doing 3/4 ounces. Next up will be some green apple juice, which, if I'm being honest, this looked a lot more green when I had first juiced it, but time and possibly aeration has made it look a little bit more like regular brown apple juice. This may affect the color slightly, so I highly recommend if you do try to make this cocktail, you try to use as fresh as possible green apple juice just to get the best results. But regardless, it's still gonna taste great either way, and you're gonna be doing 1 ounce. Next up is a bit of natural sweetness through honey. We're gonna be doing 1/2 ounce, and you can use either raw honey or you can use a honey syrup. You might find that it pours a little bit easier. And now for our alcohol, we're gonna go ahead and start with some Midori. We're only gonna be using a little bit. It's mostly just gonna be for color, not so much taste. For the Midori, you're gonna be doing 1/2 ounce. Next up is some lychee liqueur. Lychee is a very strong flavor that can really power through the other flavors in your drink, so you wanna use it sparingly. I think all we'll really need here is 1/2 ounce. And then finally, our base spirit is going to be gin. You're gonna be doing 2 ounces. Now let's go ahead and throw some ice in our shaker and shake to chill. All right, now you can grab a Collins glass filled with ice and strain your cocktail into it. And then finally, we're gonna top it off with just a little bit of soda water. And there's our drink. If you want to garnish it with a little turtle shell, I thought using 1/2 of a lime could be cute. And there you go, now you have the Ooze. It's very refreshing, a little tart, a little sour, but not overbearingly so. You kind of get a little bit of that mouth punch from the lime and the green apple, but it never really evolves into something super sharp, super shocking. I think the dilution with the soda water helps out with that, along with some of the other flavors kind of working alongside it. The lychee, like I said, is very apparent, but you can still taste the other flavors. The natural sweetness of the apple and the honey just works really well with the botanicals of the gin, and the additional fruit flavors from the lime and the lychee are also a very, very welcome addition. And you can always play around with the color a little bit. If it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want it, you could probably throw in a little bit more Midori if you need it. I don't think you'll even really be able to taste it. And if you need to kind of shift it to a certain shade of green, you can also use a very tiny bit of blue curacao to kind of nudge it in the direction that you're looking for. Regardless, it's still gonna taste great. It's a great drink for summer, and a great drink to have multiple of, maybe 4. Now that we have our drink, let's jump straight into the review of TMNT Mutant Mayhem. It's apparent that the ripples of Spider-Verse's impact have made their way across the plains of American animation, driving studios to try out new and inventive styles beyond the samey Disney Pixar style we've seen for the past few decades. Both Spider-Verse films are visually stunning and quite reflective of the characters' comic book origins, showing that there's more to animation than simple 3D work. This belief spilled over into other films recently, like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a film I didn't really have any intention in seeing until I saw where they were taking the animation style. Animation is a medium that gives you complete control over the world you make, and I'm glad more studios are giving it a try. That brings us to this new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, and look, I'm gonna be honest, I was never really a big TMNT fan. No idea why, as I am a child of the 90s, it just never really hooked me. I was much more of a street shark connoisseur, you know what I mean? But when I saw the unique animation style they were going with, I was, for the first time in my life, immediately hooked on a TMNT project. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is such a unique blend of styles, nailing a rough, sketch design akin to the IP's demographic doodling in their notebooks, while also capturing an exaggerated, stylized approach that feels right at home with its setting of New York City. The weight of the film is carried by a talented and well-directed voice cast, making the camaraderie of the Turtles both endearing and believable. While a straightforward plot leads to little surprise, I was still pleasantly satisfied with how fun the film could be for both old and young audiences. The film is thankfully not much of an origin story, leaving much of the exposition short and sweet. It's kind of like Spider-Man, we don't really need to see Uncle Ben shot every time there's a new iteration. But in case you need a refresher, 4 little turtles came into contact with a mysterious ooze that mutated them into bipedal hybrids who, under the tutelage of their adoptive mutant rat father Splinter, learned the ways of ninjutsu in order to traverse the shadows of a world unable to accept them. Too dumb to take too seriously, but too perfectly 90s to need to be changed. But in this film, we find the Turtles yearning to live a life of acceptance above ground, which Splinter adamantly disapproves of. The teens do manage to befriend a human girl named April who convinces them to take up a career in crime fighting. Along the way, they encounter other mutants led by the mutant criminal Superfly and must decide if they can try to save a world that views them as monsters. Across all of the adaptations of TMNT, there's usually a few consistencies. They're mutants, they're ninjas, they're turtles. But when it comes to the teenage aspect, I always felt like this was a missed opportunity. Sure, you have them shouting outdated 90s vernacular like radical or cowabunga, but there's no real element of youth in these characters half of the time. Mutant Mayhem remedies this substantially, starting with casting actual teenagers in the roles. And not just the latest teen TikTok star they can use to sell tickets, but actual talented actors. The interactions between the 4 of them feel genuine to a modern teen to a degree. I do think the script kind of kills some of the dialogue with its pop culture references, but still, it never really felt like some out-of-touch 50-year-old struggling to write how teens talk. They're goofy, they're impulsive, and impressionable, making them the most teenage of most of the adaptations I've seen. There's also solid voice work across the rest of the cast, primarily made up of big-name actors, which don't always get the best results, but there's still some fun to be had with them. Jackie Chan's Splinter actually carries a good chunk of the film's emotion. Ayo Edebiri's April delivers an awkward yet endearing spin on the character. Ice Cube's Superfly brings menace that feels pretty unique for a kid's film. And Paul Rudd's Mondo Gecko is probably the standout of the goofy mutant side characters. There's quite a lot of side characters with cool designs that just don't get a ton of attention, which includes another big villain played by Maya Rudolph that doesn't exactly make that big of an impact and honestly could have been excluded from the story altogether. The biggest talking point of the film is the animation, in my opinion, and for good reason. Similarly to Spider-Verse, this film employs a lower frame rate style of animation, which I think gives more weight and impact to character movements, especially during action scenes. Yet the film doesn't try to look too much like Spider-Verse, employing its own unique style that I haven't really seen done before. Like I said earlier, the style is rough around the edges, often with sketch lines left visible. I can definitely see where the team was going with this, making the style akin to sketches and doodles kids might make after seeing these characters. Yet there's even a bit of grunge aesthetic here, which I think is most apparent in the environments and human designs. A lot of the locations almost have a graffiti and street art kind of vibe to them, which I think is a great stylistic representation of New York, soundtracked by a fun assortment of East Coast hip-hop. As for the humans, well, most of them are some ugly-looking mofos, but in a good way. The designs really kind of brought me back to a period in the 90s and 2000s where youth culture was embracing more imperfect, exaggerated designs. I think it was also interesting to have humans be less visibly, conventionally appealing than the Turtles, which drives home the feeling of being an outsider like the Turtles experience, but not in the visual way you would expect. Some of the mutant designs are really great too, really leaning on some gross out visuals that ran parallel to the Turtles' heyday. Overall, it's just great design work that looks good in motion too. The fight scenes are a ton of fun, even if they are fairly sporadic. The film isn't afraid to get pretty rough and tumble with the fights, and was that an Old Boy hallway reference I caught? Good stuff. The film is a ton of fun, even if I do have some minor issues with it. While I enjoy the relationship and dynamic between the Turtles, I didn't feel like their personalities were particularly fleshed out or unique like in past iterations. I felt like Leonardo as the leader and Raph as the Rage Machine were fine, but Mikey and Donnie felt a bit off. They're still fun, don't get me wrong, I just felt like the personalities had a tendency to blend together. The story itself is pretty straightforward, which is par for the course for an introductory film like this, but it does play out in a fairly predictable way, filled with some expected cliches of the superhero genre. If you've seen the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, you might know what I'm talking about. I do think the simplicity of the film works in the film's favor in the long run though, delivering one of the most solid interpretations of the teens on film in quite a while. Mutant Mayhem is another great example of the evolution of American animation as more than just a medium, but a form of expression. The designs are unique, the style is fun, and the writing is both realistic and hilarious, making this not only one of the better animated films of the past few years, but also one of the best films from this year. Even if you're not a fan of TMNT, you're sure to have a good time if you enjoy energetic animation and goofy coming-of-age tales. Now, if we can get a Street Shark movie in the works, animation may be finally respected as actual cinema. For my rating, I'm giving this film 3.5 ninja stars out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Martini Shot. If you saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media accounts. Those links are down in the description below. And if you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.